When you can't even say my name, has the memory gone? Are you feeling numb? Go and call my name. I can't play this game, so I ask again. Will you say my name? Has the memory gone? Are you feeling numb? Or have I become tier 6 bullshit? Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Mr. here today. Merry Christmas, because this video is always pre-recorded for Christmas. Because every Christmas on this channel, we will just do Majesty Lord Blaster videos and Blaster related videos until the day I die, get hit by a truck, or get raped and thrown into an alley. Today we are talking about Majesty Lord Blaster, and more specifically I want to talk about this deck in terms of the 3 support cards we got this year. 3. 2 are promos: Blaster Blade The Vanguard, Ordeal Dragon, and Battle Sister Coco. And today we're going to talk about them because, why not? Most people were complaining when Majesty Lord Blaster got 2 promos back to back, one in Monday Bushi Road, the final issue, and one in the tournament promo of May-June. But then the deck went really silent. DZBTO3 came around and there was no main support. Fast forward to DZBTO6, Generation Drag Genesis, and we got a generic for every character encounter deck. And this card is an absolute lie. I went to a card shop on the day of the release and I asked someone, hey, how much is this card? And they were like, oh yeah, 2,000 yen. I'm like, this card is only worth 600 yen on Yurite. And they were like, yeah, because you can place in Phantom Blaster Overlord. And I was like, oh my god, bruh, come on. So today I want to set the scale straight again, and I want to talk about this deck in terms of Majesty Lord Blaster, as well as a deep dive into these 3 cards, especially her. She's really hot. The questions will be, is this deck safe? Did I finally solve this deck? And if so, what does the direction point to for this deck in the future? Because very frankly, I've already done a Majesty Lord Blaster deck profile for DivineZ and went very in depth on that one. Please check the link in the description for that video. That video is dated to Blaster Blade The Vanguard, so you won't see Coco or Ordeal Dragon, and this video is kind of meant to be like your supplementary lecture or like your addendum to that on explaining these 2 and how these 2 fit into the list. Most of the list for Majesty Lord Blaster is, unfortunately for all of you cookers out there, it's already solved, okay? There is nothing left to do. So please just check that link for the full deck profile, because a lot of these cards I just won't be explaining to again. I really want to talk about these new support because of how important they are for this deck. When you play a deck as old as Majesty Lord Blaster, you have to appreciate every card that comes by. So because of that, I want to talk about that in depth. But first, I want to start off with the right deck. And the right deck is still exactly the same from DBTO5. Now that is an important that's an important thing to make note of, because in my previous MLB video, links in the description, I had previously said, in light of the nerfs that they gave to Blaster Blade The Vanguard, I was suggesting that we play Blaster Blade The Vanguard in the right deck, because it turns Majesty Lord Blaster into a 20k base for its first attack. Well, that suggestion has not really aged very well in the light of Shoujo Doji and everything else kind of turning up during the June meta. I would say right now that we have an alternative for that, and I'll explain that interaction in the later part of this video. But I would say that right now we are comfortable enough to move back to having the original Armes back in the right deck. He's still the most flexible. He's a CB1, retire 1, or draw 1, which means you can either shut down rush decks like Rorua, or hell, if you're scared of Maelstrom today. And he gives you a draw if your opponent is not interested in rushing you, which allows you to build up more advantage for really simple CB1 draw 1. I do not need another video explaining why CB1 draw 1 is good. I'm not going to do that again. But the rest of the right deck is still the same. Marin is still a top 7 searcher for a grade 2 blaster, of which the blaster names have increased, because as I mentioned in my previous video, we have Blaster Blade, we have the infamous edgy lord himself, and the guy whom I technically stacked to the bottom of my deck last week, Blaster Dark, and now we have Blaster Blade The Vanguard, who is also a grade 2 blaster. So these are the main broad strokes that we are playing the deck with, and highlighting these in this section first is very important to me, because that will really set the stage on how I explain these next 3 cards. If you do not understand how this right deck now works, you won't be able to understand the rest of the main deck, which is generally, I'm just going to explain 3 cards, and then The rest of the main deck is self-explanatory. It's from that video. So yeah, just check it out. So now that I've got that out of the way, the first guy I'm talking about is Blaster Blade The Vanguard. And in modern decks, I don't think I need to explain this one to you. You absolutely need to play 4-off. This is not a compromise. This is not something you can giggle to me about. No, I'm sorry. This has to be a 4-off. Blaster Blade The Vanguard is Kidani's apology note, I like to say, for everything he's done to Blaster players for the last 4 years in Standard. Giving us a pathetic multi-attack locked behind Cordelia, aka a turn 4 multi-attack requiring you to have 4 different Blaster cards in the soul and open counterblast for you to do anything. This Blaster Blade The Vanguard is, as I mentioned in the previous video, a lot more effective way to multi-attack. And because he's only a multi-attack that uses himself, although it's not a very good multi-attack, but it is still a multi-attack, I'll explain it to you in case you've not seen this card before. So, at the end of the battle, that your Grade 3 Royal Paladin Vanguard attacks. When this guy is in your hand, you can counterblast 1 and bind that Vanguard. If you do, write Blaster Blade The Vanguard as stand. Okay, now, and he gains 5,000 power. Again, you cannot trust the text on this card because in the Japanese edition of Blaster Blade The Vanguard, all the texts are wrong. Bushiroad had printed the wrong text on this card. So if you would like the correct edition, you would have to straight up just play English. Which kind of sucks because I spent a lot of money on these guys. But it doesn't matter because the second skill is when placed on a Vanguard circle, you can EB3, choose one of your opponent's rear guards to retire it. Which is nice, you know, because energy is a new resource for the Blaster deck. So, I mean, being able to now use energy to retire as well gives the MLB deck more way to retire, which is good because for the longest time I've always said that Majesty Lord Blaster is a control deck just peppered with a lot of, 10k vanillas. So having another guy that does more retire is always good. And of course the final skill is that he writes Majesty Lord Blaster's power as 18,000 power when he's in the soul. So because of that, you change Majesty Lord Blaster's power to 18, and then because you have Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark in your soul, that automatically puts you at a whopping total of 20,000 power. The biggest guy we have on the format, even bigger than Grateful Gila. So I'm sorry Grateful Gila, you have been usurped by 2 men standing together. Again, why does this matter for Blaster Blade The Vanguard is because, like I said, he's the easiest multi-attack. This is the card you definitely want to use on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, turn 8, as many times as you legally can. Unfortunately though, because first of all, we've not actually invented counter charge for D-Series Blaster Blade, but we also have no real way to loop Blaster Blade The Vanguard beyond Dialin, who is the set 8 rare from DBT08, Minerva Rising, Minerva Awakening, whatever they called it. But that doesn't matter. The idea of Majesty Lord Blaster now is that we want to kill people as hard as possible. So even though the text has been errata to prevent you from using Blaster Blade The Vanguard on top of Blaster Blade The Vanguard on top of Blaster Blade The Vanguard, a 15k multi-attacker may have been too strong for Kidani, but it's not too strong for us. We now have better ways to not only search Blaster Blade The Vanguard consistently, we now have ways to stack the deck and pull more triggers and rush earlier. Again, these were all things I actually did mention in my previous Blaster Blade The Vanguard deck profile. So it was very shocking that the following 2 cards that he printed for this deck did exactly that. Like, you have to imagine my surprise. I mean, did you guys really expect Oracle Think Tank on your bingo cards? If you did, let me know. I'll send you some money, don't worry. Okay, so next up, Ordeal Dragon. Ordeal Dragon is the tournament promo from May, June. At least that was for us in the Japanese side. I have no idea what the English sides did for this guy was. But in this deck, you obviously play 4 of Ordeal Dragon, but I kind of only have 3 non-foil copies, so I'm kind of embarrassed to show you guys. Never mind, I'll be nice. It's Christmas today, right? So here you go. That's all 4 of my copies. Now, Ordeal Dragon works just like a lot of the older cards from Royal Paladin, and more specifically, he works a lot more like the way standard decks now have top 7 searches. Ordeal Dragon, his skill is, at the end of the battle, this unit attack or boost, move this card to the soul, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 blaster from among them, add it to your hand, and shuffle the deck. The bad news is that the move to soul is now a cost and not a skill text. So even though Ordeal Dragon reads a lot like Wingard Youth from G series, those of you who remember my G series videos, hello, yes, this is a bit different because if you whiff Ordeal Dragon, you go -1, which sucks a lot. However, I have great news for you. You play 4 copies of Blaster Dark, 4 copies of Blaster Blade, 4 copies of Blaster Blade The Vanguard, and 3 copies of Majesty Lord Blaster in the main deck. Sorry, it should be 3 copies of Blaster Blade because you want in the right deck, right? So you have a total of 4, 8, plus another 6, right? So you have 8 plus 6, that's 14. You have 14 if I'm not mistaken. I didn't bring my calculator. You have about a quarter, or if not virtually a half of the deck after deck thinning to find one of these 4 in the top 7. And if you're still very shy or very scared, you can play Blaster Javelin as well, who's still a really good 10k body on the board. He's also a good blaster, and it's really cool. Like, this amount of searching in D series is appreciated for a blaster deck because, you know, it kind of brings all the blaster identities together. You can even play this in Phantom Blaster Overlord if you really wanted to, but here's why you wouldn't. The continuous skill of Ordeal Dragon is that if you have a Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark in your soul, this unit gains 5,000 power. When a Dragon Grade 1 from Keter Sanctuary has the same continuous skill as a Grade 3, a 10k base guy from 2011, you know something is wrong. But I think it's really cute though. I think it's really nice that there are other modern Keter units who also are empowered by the legends, right? The idea that not only the Vanguard, but no pun intended, the rear guards also can gain 5,000 power by seeing both Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark unite in the soul, I think it's really cute. And it kind of gives a weird balance to this card as well, because it ensures that while you are encouraged to rush early with this card by calling them as early as possible to attack and trading to soul, it also gives you a bit of late game potential, because by himself in the late game, he's a 13k attacker, which is not bad considering how thin Majesty Lord Blaster deck boards go. You may end up just drawing this guy off the top card of your deck and calling it as a fast 13k attacker before Majesty Lord Blaster goes in again by himself. So again, I don't think Ordeal Dragon is like broken or anything, but I do think he's really good. I kind of missed the mark on this guy because I did my video literally 2 weeks before his review, so I did not get a chance to cover Ordeal Dragon yet, so I wanted to cover him before the year ends, so here we go. Speaking of Grade 1s that can stay on the board by themselves, last but not least, we have Battle Sister Coco, and she's from DZBT06 and is the latest card. Now, I have a lot to say about Coco, and for multiple different reasons as well. Firstly, I can talk about the fact that Oracle Think Tank is now in Standard, which is a horrifying prospect for me because I happen to be affiliated with at least 6 different Oracle Think Tank Kumas, of which they all spammed me as soon as this card came out saying, "Oh my god, Ames, I won," and I was like, oh no, I have to block more people again. But the other thing is that it is a generic, in inverted commas, for all the Keter Sanctuary encounter decks that don't have a G-Zone. So, I'm sorry Duat, I'm sorry Gurgit, you can't use this. Now, the more fun fact about Coco is that a lot of her skills are very repetitive of someone we've seen before in this format. Sarges, do you remember Sarges? Sarges, the Grade 3 Knight from Festival Collection 2023, she virtually carries almost the same skills as him, except that she's a Grade 1 8k. So I'm going to cover that. Now, just in case you don't know who Sarges is, I'm just going to put links in the description for the Bastion video, because he's in that deck profile. I think that should be enough context for all of you to be able to caught up with, so I'll just throw that in there in case you need it. Coco, her skills are very simple. You only can use her skills if you don't have a G-Zone when placed on a rig, and only one clan. Yeah, so if you only have one clan, your Vanguard only has one clan, and you don't have a G-Zone, then you can use these skills. The first skill is when placed on a Vanguard circle from anywhere. So yes, you can place an Ezreal if you want to. Choose one card from your hand and put it into your soul. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck. Put one into your hand, one on top of the deck, or one into the soul. And then that's it. Oh, and of course, if you put in the soul, this unit gains 5. So, by herself, she's potentially a 13k body if you don't stack a trigger, but if you stack a trigger, that is still pretty good. In a deck like Majesty Lord Blaster, where we still cannot plus in the Year of our Lord 2024, that's completely fine, because now that we get a way to stack cards in the main phase, it's pretty impressive, because Majesty Lord Blaster has a lot of drive checks, so that top top deck scry that Oracle Think Tank is known for is very, very appreciated. And again, this is something I called out completely in my Blaster Blade The Vanguard deck profile. I did say before that we could play Kettle Sanctuary generics that could stack the top card of the deck. I chose one rare from DBT10, the Grade 2 Dragon. You can now just play Coco in that slot instead. So again, I am very grateful that we do have these kind of supporting mechanics that do help the design space of this deck. It makes the deck very easy to build and very intuitive to play. Which is strange because most people think this deck is like some god hard skilled deck, but actually it's just not. The second skill is continuous skill on Rearguard the Guardian Circle. If your opponent is grade 3 or greater, if your opponent checks a trigger, this unit gains 10,000 power and 10,000 shield for that turn. Again, this is a straight up rip-off from the festival cycles of 2024, including Sajas. So if your opponent does pull a trigger, she's a 15k shield and an 18k base. Minimum. And that's really good. But again, this needs your opponent to be grade 3 or greater, so that skill is really slow. But no matter what, as long as you open Coco, she is pretty fun. And I mean, she is really hot. But the sad part about Coco is that she is a net zero and doesn't contribute to the Blaster strategy at all. Yes, she may stack the top cards of the deck, which is, really good. But that doesn't really help us do anything. Like, yeah, she can help us get rid of one card and another card to the soul. Yeah, she can give us soul for Emmeline and even search Emmeline herself. Technically. But like, the fact that she still doesn't plus mean the whole deck runs on a deck deficit. Over time, you are losing guard advantage, you are losing hand advantage as long as you just keep playing the deck against other people. Which is still very unfortunate in my honest opinion. Coco though, this is probably her best application in Majesty Lord Blaster. Like in Phantom Blaster Overlord, your board is so compact because you want to slaughter all the rearguards as fast as possible. You don't have time for this Catholic woman to start walking on stage say, hello, do you have space for me? No, we don't have space for you. Die, become my food. And in Blonde Ezel it's even worse because Ezel also needs you to clear the rearguard circles and Coco just stays on the board and does nothing, right, besides the grade 3 requirement. But that's way later on. The same for Minerva. Minerva is a deck that requires you to have a lot of Genesis interaction. This is Oracle Think Tank. This is not even the same clan. So again, as much as I love Coco as a card, not just the art but the skill, I just don't think this is very good. But again, because Blaster Blade as a deck is so freaking non-existent right now, I think this is probably her best application. So again, to all those people out there who are saying this is a great generic, I don't think this is a great generic. If you want to see a great generic, I'll show you a great generic. My next video, Draconic Overlord. I'll make it happen. So last but not least now, we need to talk about what do these 3 cards actually mean for the Majesty Lord Blaster deck. Now that I've covered it, now you are probably wondering the question that brought you here, did I actually break Majesty Lord Blaster? Somewhat no as well. So from the get-go, we have a clear winning image in that sense. I can't believe I just said that phrase. Blaster Blade The Vanguard is now a much easier multi-attack to achieve and allows you to play away from Cordelia. Cordelia used to be a very hard win condition, but now we can just save Cordelia as like a one-off in the back row in case we are still alive on turn 4. If not, we can just focus on the multi-attack shenanigans that Blaster Blade The Vanguard will give. A total of 4 drives against a grade 2 Vanguard is very strong, and as long as you pull a trigger, /cheat, /use Psycholia, you can win the game from that point. And that is pretty much what God intended, I suppose. So on that aspect, Blaster Blade The Vanguard has succeeded in helping us move away from Cordelia. It allows us to have an alternate way to multi-attack, and above all else, it's a new grade 2 Blaster name, which was unprecedented. We've never gotten a new Blaster Blade in years. So again, I'm very happy for this guy. Ordeal Dragon. Ordeal Dragon is a top 7 searcher for our entire Blaster archetype, and he allows us to early rush and gives us a very weird form of board evasion. In a format where Chronos Command, Trans Els, Gandiva, Vermilion, Varga all run rampant, this is very important. This allows us to rush without actually losing hand advantage and ensuring that we can spend our early guys in the early game and getting our more important pieces, the Blaster Boys, early on for our turn 2 to turn 3 assault. Ordeal Dragon definitely is the shining card in this deck because he ties together the win more nature of Blaster Blade The Vanguard with the more stable basis that the original Majesty Lord Blaster wanted to achieve, and for that I'm eternally grateful. In that regard, Ordeal Dragon is certainly better than the options we used to play before, like Selgaon or Parama or Biscotti or even hell, what was her name? The Spiral Cutie Angel. That's right. So again, this is also really good for the deck. Coco, while she has a very special place in my heart because I too am Catholic, and this is clearly a very hot Catholic woman. She's just not very good right now. Coco is honestly the slot that is most probably going to get cut. But if we are going to play her for the time being, I'll say she's pretty good for now. She also is a Grade 1 body, so she can rush alongside Ordeal Dragon. She helps us put cards from the hand to the soul. That is also an important interaction because if I manage to move excess copies of Blaster Blade The Vanguard into the soul, Majesty Lord Blaster will be a 20k attacker on his first attack, which is very important because we don't play Blaster Blade The Vanguard in the right deck anymore. We now play it in the main deck. So if you have an extra copy early, you can just chuck that around and now he becomes 20k. So that was the interaction I wanted to talk to you about. However, beyond niche applications like that, Coco doesn't really do very much. Like, if you only have one card in hand and it's Coco, you still lose the game because you don't have another card to convert into Soul Fodder. It's just not possible. So Coco kind of feels a bit like a win more card, but I feel that if Majesty Lord Blaster just gets one new good card in 2025, this is probably the first one to go. I'm very sorry, Coco. I do like you very much, but end of the line for you, girl. And that will wrap up my deck discussion for Majesty Lord Blaster this Christmas. Is the deck saved? Yes, the deck is actually saved. If I had to go back in time and tell you the state of Majesty Lord Blaster at the end of 2023, it was horrendous. As I showed you before with cards like Cordelia, you had such a hard time achieving a win condition and only one real card that supported you in terms of your early game, your mid game, and your late game. And then you had all these guys just walking garnets floating around. It was impossible to play this deck back in 2023, and I will be upfront and honest about that. However, this year, we not only got a better way to multi-attack, we got a searcher for the entire archetype, and a girl who can play like Sages, and I love Sages. So overall, I do think yes, this deck is saved from the divine support. Absolutely, through the miracle of 2 promos and 1 triple rare, we definitely saved Majesty Lord Blaster this Christmas. However, is this enough to be competitive in today's meta? I'm not sure. I'm gonna leave that to the rest of you. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Merry Christmas.